Welcome, brave souls. I am your guide into the realm of the unknown. Here, among these ancient tombstones and whispering trees, we uncover the most intriguing and terrifying stories that will send shivers down your spine. Encounter the supernatural in real life. Each story will transport you to a world where fear reigns and the line between the living and the dead blurs. Are you ready to face your fears? Let the stories begin. Detective Maria Lawson had been on the trail of the missing for weeks. The string of disappearances near the old highway had left a trail of despair across the region. Locals whispered about the Red Lantern Cafe, a small, run-down diner on the outskirts of town. No one knew much about it, but the whispers were always the same. People who stopped there never came back. Determined to find answers, Maria decided to investigate the cafe herself. It was late when Maria's car pulled up to the diner. The rain had turned the dirt road into a slick mess, but she had pushed through. The cafe stood isolated, surrounded by dense woods. The flickering neon sign buzzed in the darkness, casting an eerie red glow over the place. It was strangely quiet, save for the sound of the rain pattering against her windshield. Steeling herself, Maria exited the car and approached the entrance. As she pushed the door open, a bell jingled overhead, the sound sharp in the stillness. The interior of the cafe was typical: red vinyl booths, a worn-out linoleum floor, and a long counter with stools. But something about it felt wrong. The air was thick with an odd, greasy smell that didn't quite match the usual scent of a roadside diner. A man stood behind the counter, wiping it down with a dirty rag. He looked up as Maria entered, his eyes narrowing. He was middle-aged with a tired, weathered face, and his name tag read Sam. Maria noted the faded stains on his apron and the way his hands moved, slow, deliberate, almost menacing. "Evening," Sam greeted, his voice gruff. "What can I get you?" Maria forced a smile, slipping into the role of a weary traveler. "Just a cup of coffee, please. It's been a long drive." Sam nodded and turned to pour her a cup from the pot that sat on the warmer. As he did, Maria took a seat at the counter, her eyes scanning the room. There were only a few other patrons, a trucker nursing a plate of food in the corner, and a couple sitting in a booth, speaking in hushed tones. They all looked tired, worn down, and none of them made eye contact. Sam set the coffee in front of her, and Maria wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "So, this place gets many visitors?" she asked casually. Sam shrugged, leaning on the counter. "We get by. Not many folks come through here anymore, though." "Really? I heard a few people might have come by recently. Friends of mine, actually. Haven't heard from them in a while." Sam's eyes flicked up to meet hers, a flash of something dark passing through them. "Can't say I've seen anyone like that." "You sure they came this way?" Maria nodded, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. "I'm sure. They mentioned stopping at a diner around here." The trucker in the corner shifted uncomfortably in his seat, catching Maria's attention. There was a look of quiet desperation on his face, and Maria's instincts told her he knew something. She made a mental note to speak with him when she got the chance. Sam, however, seemed unbothered. "Like I said, can't help you. Maybe they kept driving." Maria set her mug down, sensing that she wasn't going to get much more out of Sam. "Thanks anyway," she said, and made her way over to the trucker's table. He looked up as she approached, his eyes darting nervously toward the counter. "Mind if I sit?" Maria asked, her tone gentle. He hesitated before nodding. "Sure." Maria slid into the booth across from him, lowering her voice. "I'm looking for some people who've gone missing. I think they might have stopped here. Do you know anything about that?" The trucker swallowed hard, glancing around the room as if someone might be listening. I don't know," he stammered. "But you should leave, miss. This place, it ain't right." Maria leaned in closer. "What do you mean?" Before the man could answer, the door to the kitchen swung open, and a young waitress emerged carrying a tray. Her face was pale, and there was a haunted look in her eyes. She set a plate down in front of the couple in the booth without a word, her hands shaking. As she turned to go back, Maria caught sight of bruises on her wrists, poorly concealed by her sleeves. The trucker lowered his voice to a whisper. "You see what I mean? This place, people come in, but they don't leave. I've been trying to get up the nerve to go, but—" His voice trailed off as Sam's eyes locked onto them from across the room. The trucker quickly stood up, throwing some money on the table. "I got to go," he muttered, and hurried out of the cafe. Maria watched him leave, her unease growing. She knew she couldn't leave yet. Something was very wrong here, and she had to get to the bottom of it. Just as she was about to follow the trucker out, the waitress appeared at her side, her voice low and urgent. "Please, don't go yet. Meet me out back in 10 minutes. I'll explain everything." Maria nodded slightly, her heart pounding. The waitress hurried away, disappearing into the kitchen. Maria waited for a few more minutes, finishing her coffee before quietly slipping out the back door. The rain had let up, leaving the air damp and cold. Maria made her way around the side of the building to the back, where she found the waitress waiting under a dim light. The girl looked even more frightened up close, her eyes wide with fear. "What's going on here?" Maria asked, keeping her voice calm. The waitress took a deep breath. "You have to understand. This place, it's not what it seems. Sam, he's dangerous. The people who come here, they don't leave because he doesn't let them." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" He kills them," the waitress whispered, her voice shaking. "He kills them and he serves them to the customers." Maria's stomach turned. She had suspected something terrible, but hearing it confirmed was almost too much. "Why haven't you gone to the police?" The waitress looked down, tears brimming in her eyes. "He threatened me, said he'd do the same to me if I tried. I'm trapped here, just like the others." Maria's mind raced. She needed to get this girl out of here, and she needed to bring Sam to justice. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "We're going to get out of here. But I need you to stay calm and follow my lead. Do you understand?" The waitress nodded, wiping her eyes. "Yes, I understand." Maria took a deep breath, formulating a plan. "I'm going to call for backup. We'll take him down together." But before she could reach for her phone, the back door slammed open, and Sam stepped out, his face twisted in anger. "What the hell are you two doing?" he snarled. Maria stepped in front of the waitress, her hand going to her gun. "Back off, Sam. It's over." Sam's eyes flicked to the gun, and for a moment Maria thought he might back down. But then he lunged at her with a roar, knocking the gun from her hand. Maria struggled against him, but he was surprisingly strong, his hands closing around her throat. The waitress screamed, but instead of running, she grabbed a nearby piece of wood and swung it at Sam's head. The blow landed with a sickening crack, and Sam staggered back, releasing Maria. Maria gasped for air, her vision swimming, but she managed to grab her gun from the ground. She aimed it at Sam, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Don't move," she commanded, but Sam only laughed, a horrible, gurgling sound. "You think you can stop this?" he sneered, blood dripping from the wound on his head. "You have no idea what you've walked into." Maria didn't hesitate. She fired, the shot echoing through the night. Sam fell to the ground, blood pooling around him. Breathing heavily, Maria turned to the waitress, who was shaking uncontrollably. "It's over," she said, though she knew it was only the beginning. The sound of sirens in the distance brought some relief. Backup was on its way, and soon the horrors of the Red Lantern Cafe would be exposed. But as she looked down at Sam's lifeless body, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more, a darkness that ran deeper than she could understand. When the police arrived, Maria and the waitress were taken to safety, and the cafe was shut down. The investigation that followed uncovered a nightmare. Bones and body parts hidden in the kitchen, evidence of countless murders. The Red Lantern Cafe had been a slaughterhouse, hiding in plain sight. But the story didn't end there. The waitress, whose name was Emily, was taken into protective custody. She told the police everything, and her testimony helped put away others who had been involved in the cover-up. Yet, Emily remained haunted, plagued by nightmares of Sam and the horrors she had witnessed. As for Maria, she couldn't forget the darkness she had encountered that night. The Red Lantern Cafe was gone, but the memory lingered, a reminder that evil can lurk in the most ordinary places, waiting for the right moment to strike. As the chilling echoes of the last tale linger in the air, let us delve into another shadowy corner of the night, where the unknown waits with bated breath. Gather your courage, for the next story begins. 20 years later, the Red Lantern Cafe had been reduced to ruins, abandoned and left to rot after the horrors that had unfolded there. Locals avoided it like the plague, and the stories about what had happened there faded into the background. A dark chapter in the town's history that no one wanted to revisit. But some tales never truly die. They just wait for the right moment to resurface. Alex and Claire Mitchell were not locals. They were a young couple passing through town on their way to a new life on the West Coast. After a long day of driving, they found themselves on a desolate stretch of highway, the GPS guiding them through back roads as a shortcut. The sun had set hours ago, and fatigue was setting in. When they spotted the faint outline of a building just off the road, they decided to stop and stretch their legs. "I think that's an old cafe or something," Alex said, squinting through the windshield at the dilapidated structure. "It looks abandoned," Claire replied, a hint of unease in her voice. "But let's check it out anyway. I need to use the bathroom." Alex nodded, pulling the car off the road and onto what remained of the parking lot. The building looked like it had been untouched for years. The windows were shattered, the paint peeling, and the neon sign that once proudly displayed Red Lantern Cafe was now a rusty, unreadable mess. "I don't know about this place," Claire murmured as they stepped out of the car. The air was thick with the smell of rain, even though the sky was clear. "Just a quick look," Alex said, trying to sound reassuring. "Then we'll head back to the car." As they approached the entrance, the wooden door creaked open, as if inviting them in. Alex felt a chill run down his spine, but shrugged it off. He pushed the door open wider, revealing the dark interior of the cafe. Inside, it was like stepping into a time capsule. The booths were covered in dust, the tables still set with old dishes and silverware. A thick layer of grime coated every surface, and the air was stale, carrying a faint metallic scent that made Claire's stomach churn. "This place is creepy," she whispered, her eyes darting around the room. "Let's just go." But Alex was already moving further inside, curiosity getting the better of him. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the counter where a rusty old coffee pot still sat on the warmer. "It's like they just left everything here." Claire hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to leave, but she didn't want to be left alone outside, so she followed him in. The couple wandered through the cafe, their footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. "What do you think happened here?" Claire asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Alex shrugged. "Who knows? Maybe it just went out of business. Places like this die all the time." But as they ventured deeper into the cafe, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone, or something, lurking in the shadows. "Let's check out the kitchen," Alex suggested, heading toward the back of the cafe. Claire hesitated. "Do we have to?" "Come on, it'll be quick," Alex assured her. They pushed through the swinging doors into the kitchen, and the sight that greeted them made Claire gag. The room was a mess of decaying food, broken appliances, and something far worse. The walls were stained with dark, dried streaks that Claire desperately hoped weren't blood. The stench of rot was overwhelming, and she had to cover her mouth to keep from being sick. "Alex, this is disgusting," she said, her voice muffled by her hand. "We need to go." But Alex was staring at something on the far wall. "Claire, look at this," he said, his voice oddly distant. Reluctantly, Claire followed his gaze. There, scratched into the wall with what looked like fingernails, were the words, "Help me." Claire's heart raced. "We need to leave. Now." Alex nodded, finally shaken by the gravity of what they'd found. Yeah, let's go." They turned to leave, but as they did, the swinging doors suddenly slammed shut with a force that sent a shockwave through both of them. Claire screamed, grabbing Alex's arm. "What the hell?" Alex muttered, rushing to the door and trying to push it open. It wouldn't budge. Panicking, Claire tugged at the door, but it was as if it had been sealed shut from the outside. "Alex, what's going on?" "I don't know," he shouted, yanking on the handle with all his strength. Suddenly they heard a soft creaking, like the sound of old wood straining under weight. They both froze, listening as the noise grew louder, closer, until it was right above them. Claire's eyes darted up to the ceiling, her breath catching in her throat. There, in the rafters, something was moving, a shadowy figure crawling along the beams with unnatural speed. It was humanoid, but its limbs were wrong, too long, too thin. And then it dropped down, landing in a crouch just a few feet away from them. The figure slowly rose to its full height, towering over them. It was dressed in what might have once been a waiter's uniform, but now it was tattered and stained. Its face was obscured by a mask, a grotesque parody of a human face, with exaggerated features and a permanent, maniacal grin. Claire screamed again, but no sound came out. She was paralyzed with fear as the figure slowly advanced, its head tilting to the side in a way that seemed almost curious. Alex grabbed a knife from a nearby counter, holding it out in front of him. "Stay back," he warned, his voice trembling. The figure paused, its gaze shifting between Alex and the knife. Then, with a speed that defied belief, it lunged at him. Alex swung the knife, but it was too slow. The figure was on him in an instant, grabbing his wrist with a vice-like grip and twisting it until the knife clattered to the floor. Claire watched in horror as the figure lifted Alex off his feet with ease, slamming him into the wall. She could hear the sickening crack of bones breaking, but Alex didn't have time to scream. The figure's other hand closed around his throat, and with a quick, brutal motion, it snapped his neck. Claire's vision blurred as she backed into a corner, her legs giving out beneath her. The figure dropped Alex's lifeless body to the floor, turning its attention to her. "No, please," she whimpered, her voice barely audible. But the figure didn't move. It simply stood there, staring at her with those cold, unfeeling eyes behind the mask. And then, slowly, it reached up and removed the mask. What lay beneath was worse than Claire could have imagined. The face was barely human, twisted and deformed, as if someone had tried to graft different faces together and failed miserably. The skin was pale and stretched tight over sharp bones, the eyes sunken and dead, the mouth a jagged, bloody mess. The creature stepped closer, and Claire could see now that its entire body was covered in scars and stitches, as if it had been pieced together from different people. She tried to scream, to run, but her body refused to obey. The creature knelt down in front of her, tilting its head as it studied her. Then, to her horror, it spoke, a garbled, distorted voice that sounded like it was coming from multiple throats at once. "New ingredients," it rasped, reaching out a hand to touch her face. Claire's vision went black as the creature's hand closed around her throat, cutting off her air. She didn't have the strength to fight back, and within seconds she was unconscious. When she woke, she was no longer in the kitchen. The room she was in was cold, dark, and smelled of death. She tried to move, but her arms and legs were bound to a metal table, Panic set in as she realized she was in some sort of basement, probably beneath the cafe. The only light came from a single flickering bulb overhead. The creature was there, watching her from the shadows. It approached the table, its grotesque face illuminated by the dim light. Claire struggled against her restraints, but they were too tight. Why are you doing this?" she managed to choke out, tears streaming down her face. The creature didn't respond. Instead, it moved to a nearby table and picked up a large, rusted butcher knife. It walked back to her, the blade glinting in the faint light. "Please, don't," Claire sobbed, her voice breaking. But the creature wasn't listening. It raised the knife, and the last thing Claire saw was its monstrous face, contorted into that hideous, twisted grin. The Red Lantern Cafe claimed 2 more victims that night, and their bodies were never found. The couple's car was discovered by the side of the road days later, abandoned and covered in dust. The police searched the area but found no sign of Alex or Claire. The case was eventually closed, another unsolved mystery to add to the cafe's dark history. And so the Red Lantern Cafe continued its grim work, feeding on the lost and the unwary, its secrets buried beneath the ruins. The darkness that lingered there waited patiently for the next unfortunate soul to stumble upon it, hungry for more. So, brave souls, our journey in the shadows is coming to an end for tonight. We hope that these stories have stirred your imagination and given you goosebumps. Remember, the world is full of secrets waiting to be discovered, and the line between reality and the supernatural is thinner than you might think. If you enjoyed today's stories and want to hear more creepy and unexplained, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you will be the first to know about new stories of horror and intrigue. Click on the bell icon so you don't miss a single creepy story. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some doors are better left unopened.